Thank you for tuning in to the World Builder's Anvil, episode 246. Today's episode, the City of Mystr, an Elven city inspired by Mesoamerica.
Episode 294.
What did I say?
246.
I just said 246? How on earth did I do that? Episode 246, guys. 246.
I don't care what number it is. It's now 246.
Now, episode 294, but you probably knew that by reading the header.
Don't know where to start building your fantasy world?
Do you need more? Does it make sense?
Forget any worries and become a crafter of imagination.
This is the place where we will prime your mind.
Now, it's time to heat up the forge.
Break out the mithril ingots and hammer.
Welcome to the World Builder's Anvil. I'm Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And I'm Michael Miller.
Let's sup from the muck of Java and build. Welcome back, Lost in Numbers. My name is Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And clearly drinking too much wine already, even though I've only had like 3 sips, I am Michael Miller. How did I do that?
I don't know.
I
Maybe
must have been reading.
So it might even be funnier later on when I
No, leave it. Leave it all the way it was. Just the whole thing.
There.
Yeah, stay
Even if I screwed up and heard you wrong, but I swear you said...
I don't know. Maybe I said it wrong. You know what it is? It was 246 because if you look in your first header, it says all the way back in episode 246. So I quickly looked up and I read, yeah. I saw 246 right there and used that instead of saying 290.
And it's funny because like that...
Welcome to episode 294, everybody.
Yes.
But the funny thing is I still read the rest of the upper header fine.
Yep. But the 246 got stuck in the brain problem.
Oh my gosh, what a long day. I have had a very trying day. I am drinking a massive glass of wine, and I may polish off the rest of the bottle myself, even though it's really meant for 2.
2 really big glasses that go into your belly.
No. Because we get the double-sized bottles. So what I'd be drinking would be equivalent to a regular bottle of wine. So
the last time we were at Costco, I saw a glass of wine that could have probably held a lot more than those 2 bottles of wine.
Yeah.
It was almost the height of Kristen.
Oh, I think I've seen those. They use them as Christmas trees. You fill them up with like Christmas ornaments instead of buying a tree.
Okay.
I saw that and I was like, oh, what an interesting idea. But I was like, I don't think I can get behind that because we usually get real trees. So
I thought it was just good to drink wine out of. So.
Well, there's that too, of course. So yeah, today is one of those days where I should have just stayed in bed. Like everything went wrong at work today. And I get like partway through, like literally like halfway through my work day. And I had only accomplished in doing a very small portion of the things I was supposed to get accomplished. And then I was like, okay, I'm moving on to the next task and I need a specific part. And I didn't think I had any. And I found it on the truck. And I was like, okay, this part is going to be the thing that turns the day around and starts catapulting the productivity for the remainder of the afternoon. We are going to, charge through the rest of this afternoon and get a lot of stuff done.
That's right.
And then I climbed up on the ladder to realize that part wouldn't work. It should have been the exact thing that I needed, but because the place that I'm working in has the most horrible electrical setup I've seen in a long time. Oh. Everything is done weird and stupid. And it should have been a 3-prong cord cap and they needed a twist lock. And I'm like, why on earth do you need that here? This is dumb. So I was like, whatever. So the rest of my day just followed the same as my morning.
So you made it to that moment where you thought I was going to turn around and punched you in the gut.
And I was determined to turn it around. And then like while I was working in the office, I got shocked really bad. And honestly, I meant to say this before we started recording. I'm not kidding. Like if I drop, I'm either having a stroke or a heart attack. Dial 911 to my house. I'm not kidding. Like okay. I had a cross the heart shock that I literally felt it for about 2 hours after the fact.
Wow. Jeez.
And yeah, so
this is one of those things that can happen to electricians.
Yeah, I mean, I've been shocked tons and tons of times. It happens.
Powerful shot.
It comes to, well, it wasn't so much that it, I mean, yes, but here's the thing. The the human body having conductivity, you're conductive, and also having resistance, you're effectively a walking light bulb. So if you touch a hot leg of AC and you are grounded, wherever those 2 points are, like for sake of argument, the most common thing that will happen to an electrician is you're playing with something and you shock from what you're touching, so your fingertips, your hand, somewhere on your fingers, to maybe another part of that very same hand. You're touching something hot. I'm saying the word hot. It's not temperature hot. It's electrically.
Electrical hot. Yeah.
Yeah. It's electrically. It's it's a hot wire. So it's a live circuit.
Mm-hmm.
So you touch that live line and then you accidentally ground part of your hand and you just get a shock in the hand.
Yeah.
Or maybe you're touching with your fingers and you accidentally ground out part of your arm and you just get a shock from those 2 points in your arm. I have been doing this 20 years and I have never gotten across the heart shock until today, where, at least I don't think so, where I was touching it with one hand. I had both of my hands in a box and I was touching it with one hand, and somehow, and it shouldn't have happened because I'm very careful. I'm very good at my job.
Mm-hmm.
I know how to
doing this for a couple of
I know how to keep myself safe.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow, and I really think that there might have been a nick in one of the wire's insulation to cause it. Somehow I was touching one thing with the left hand and I ground it out with the right. And
oh, wow.
So it went all the way through one hand, up one arm, all the way across my chest and down the other arm to ground out. Now, getting back to your body having conductivity as well as resistance, the more resistance you have, the more juice is going to get shooting through you because your body is chewing some of it up. You're burning off those electrons. It's basically turning you into a motor or a light bulb.
Okay.
So if you get that little shock where it goes from the tip of your finger to, like, say, another finger, sure, it's going to hurt, but it's not burning through a lot of you. So it's not a lot of juice. But where if you're going from one arm all the way through most of your body to another part, it's a big shock. You really feel it. And that's what I got hit with today. And man, it was significant. Like, I yelled out and I felt bad. Like I terrified the women. I was working in a woman's office and there was women just outside their office. There's 3 women in this office. And they were all, scared for me and worried for me. And I was just pissed off and I felt bad because I didn't want to scare them. And I was just like, I'm so sorry. And they're like, oh no, are you okay? And I'm just like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm just pissed off. So, because it shouldn't have happened. So, but seriously, if I do happen to drop and, call 911.
Duly noted.
I don't think I will. I'm feeling much better now, but I did tell my boss about it and I said, look, I might go to the ambulatory, and he's like, just to do the paperwork, fill it all out. You'll be, he's like, I totally understand. He was very cool about it.
Well, I'm sure, in that type of office setting, it's, not the first time that's happened to someone.
I'm not sure I follow you in that office setting.
Well, and essentially an electrician, a group of electricians, someone getting shocked is probably not super uncommon.
No. I was the only electrician. I was doing work in someone's business.
You know what I'm saying? You told your boss.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. With his business, I'm sure it's not the first. I know you were working in an office. I was using it more as saying where you work as an office, not
Gotcha.
the physical work site.
So yeah, between the work itself not going well and not getting as much done as I wanted to get done and getting the crap shocked out of me, I haven't had the best day.
Besides that, it was a pretty good day.
Yeah. Oh, aside to that, it was swimming.
Excellent.
It's improving now that I'm here with you, Jeff.
I have that effect on people,
and I appreciate it. It's what keeps
a calmingness.
It keeps me coming back to the microphone. All right, so I appreciate you listening, both Jeff and you guys. So we're talking about one of Jeff's cities today. We're talking about Mystr. I love the name of the city, by the way, and I assume that this is the Mystiritas.
This is the Mystiritas capital.
Okay.
The Mystiritas are. I have to give a little background because let me give you the idea what the episode is.
Yeah, please do.
I've been watching a lot of stuff on ancient cities.
Okay.
So it made me think, how deliberately do we think about the way our cities work, especially early on? Things like even streets, are invented. Uh, there's some point at which cities don't have streets. There's some point at which they don't have street addresses.
Famously, if you're not an American or not from New England or don't know anything about Boston history, famously, the city streets of Boston, the main roads were all laid out by the cows. Mm-hmm. They were all cow paths, and eventually they got trodden down, and then eventually they got paved, and then eventually buildings went up, and now Boston is a train wreck to drive in.
Well, because Boston was not planned. It's semi-planned, but I mean, a lot of cities don't have formal planning.
Chicago and Detroit.
Where Manhattan, if you've ever had the luxury of going to Manhattan,
I have,
or Indianapolis, or there's lots of places that have been very planned. Like a lot of people don't know, Indianapolis was actually created after Indiana became a state. It was planned from ground zero to be at the state capitol and laid out for future growth. And if you've ever driven around there, yes, during rush hour, that the highways have a lot of traffic on them.
Name a city that doesn't suffer that problem.
The thing is, you can drive through it without touching a highway on a Sunday, and there's a grid not only of streets like in Manhattan, there's like double-laned highways that go throughout it as well too. Obviously, land's cheaper there because sometimes cost does play an effect because you only have a certain amount of space. But it made me think about I've kind of had an idea that the city of Mystr was based off of the canal city of, and I'm not going to even try to attempt the name, but the capital of the Aztecs, Tecalon or something like that.
I didn't know there was a canal city down there.
Oh yes. Oh no, it was. When was it Cortez who conquered?
Oh wait. Allow me to specify. Does that mean a city that is on a canal or a city of canals, i.e. Venice?
I.e. Venice.
Okay.
Essentially, the city was built in the middle of a lake, which got filled in by the Spanish, and is now Mexico City. But essentially, it was an island with causeways from the city to the mainland, and that's kind of where the Aztecs kind of grew out from, and sort of the homeland. And it was something that I always found neat. So I knew that the city had canals, and I knew that it was on a lake because I liked the idea. And I kind of like the idea of the calendars in Mesoamerica. There's a lot of inspiration from Mesoamerica that kind of went in. Not strictly Aztec; they're not quite that bloodthirsty. But my elves do partake in human sacrifice.
Yes,
of course.
But now, all right. Allow me to specify on that one. Your elves do elven sacrifice or human sacrifice?
That's fair. The way I define it in my world is technically sentient being.
Fair enough. Okay. They're like, oh no, we only kill humans.
And Michael and my version, not some other, the idea that where it's like in the ballpark of intelligence.
We heard human sacrifice was awesome. We're going to do that.
We're going to do that. And all of the elves agreed.
There was much rejoicing.
But the idea was, I briefly kind of thought about it before. And actually it was when I went on a cruise and I went to some Mayan cities, and obviously they're not quite
Playa del Carmen.
None of the big ones. It was a tiny one.
You got to go there. You'd love it.
Yeah, and when I get a chance, I'll go. Obviously, there's lots of places I need to go because I would love. And there are several.
Okay, you know what? Once Sarah starts working, once we're like clean and clear, and we're gonna start traveling and stuff. I want you and I to do a history vacation. I want you and I to pick a place and really seriously like hit museums and historical stuff that Sarah would not have fun with. Would Kristen?
Vacation is?
Does Kristen like that stuff?
Yes.
So I've got competition because Sarah doesn't.
And I'll tell you, I have a dream vacation right now, and I'll throw this out to everyone.
It's with me, isn't it? It's with me.
It's obviously with you, Mike.
It's obviously with me. Okay.
People aside, though, there is a company that does archaeological food tours in Italy.
Oh, I am so in.
Yeah, I have no idea how much they cost. I assume they're not cheap.
Now, I have one
because they don't list the price.
I have one problem with this. I've recently discovered that I probably can't eat gluten anymore.
Well, that's another story we'll get to very quickly. But this tour is literally you go to like into places where people don't typically get access to, and then in the when it's time to eat, they have a food historian and a chef who work to prepare dishes of the time.
I love this idea.
Yeah, and and that's where you learn that like the Romans actually created hamburgers. They didn't call it that, but they
really.
Oh yeah, they had hamburger patties, which you'd buy at little storefronts. You could buy essentially like fast food.
Bodegas. Romans invented bodegas and hamburgers.
Well, it was actually more like fast food because it would be like a little place, and all they would do is sell like these patties. Maybe you could get some bread from there, but it was like a small restaurant essentially. It was in someone's house, but it was street basing part of the house. But once again, that kind of gets to what we're going to, which is, think about how your cities are laid out based off of your culture. So one of the things I wanted to do was, I don't want to do too much research on the actual layout. And I know Cortez had maps of Tectelon at its height, which was when they showed up and conquered it. But the thing was, I wanted it to be a very deliberate process the way the city was built. The elves are very much tied to not only solar astronomy, the movement of the sun, but stellar astronomy, the movement of stars. So they're a big observer of the night sky, as many of the Mesoamericans were.
How do they interpret them? Do they? I mean, they don't know that they're, big bodies of gas. What do they?
No, but they watch the movements is the biggest thing that.
I'm just curious. A quick aside about the Mysteritas. Do they Mysteritas? Excuse me.
I have no clue.
Oh, you haven't created that yet. Okay.
I haven't thought out that part of it.
All right, fair enough.
I know lots of bits and pieces of them.
Okay.
Which will make them it's really great to create cultures that way.
This is a build episode waiting to happen. And they're really great. It's like, I know their alphabet. I know their number system. I know lots of interesting things about them. But I haven't really thought through very much outside of the few areas that just caught my attention. Like I have a whole writing system for them, which is based off of the Mayan alpha hieroglyphs. In the book Breaking the Code. But I came up with my own thing because it's too complicated. I'm not smart enough. So I kind of came up with my own thing to sort of get to alphabet and have images within it. It's a very complicated language, which I actually probably couldn't write. I can do the basics of, but the fully... the system, but yes. you couldn't write it.
Exactly.
That's fine.
And because there's an artistic element to it, which I couldn't do. I could write the letters, but it would be missing massive parts of it. And but that's all unimportant. But if you go to the website, there is actually a hand-drawn image, and Michael had a copy emailed to him.
Did I?
Earlier today.
I apologize. I have not opened that email then. Would you like me to look at it now?
If you want to see it.
I mean, is it important for the discussion? Because I will, if that's the case.
Because I'll be talking about.
Oh, I see. Here we go. This is. Hang on. Let me open this. I am looking at a hand-drawn. This is an overhead map I'm looking at.
Yes.
I can't seem to zoom in on it, which I'd like to. So it looks like, I'll describe it to you guys. It kind of looks like a compass. It's a circle. The very inner of the circle has a square. On each side of the square is a triangle, and then that is that has a circle around it at the tips of the triangle. And then from there, you have concentric circles that go outward. And it looks like, I'm assuming, roads.
There are roads and canals.
And then you have lines that go into that circle or radiating outward, depending on your perspective or interpretation. And those are either roads or canals, as Jeff has clarified.
Yep. So essentially, the way it works, and there will be. Are
you gonna post this?
That's why I wanted the image of it, so I could post it into the show.
Okay. Cool.
And there's a little insert at the bottom, which is actually the middle of the city.
I think I missed the insert.
Blown up.
Oh yeah. No, I got that. Okay.
And
I can't zoom in on this though, so I can't read. You have a lot of things written in there, and I cannot read those. It's also my
handwriting, so even if you could zoom in on it, it would not help you that much.
I bet I could read it. I literally cannot make out the letters. It's so small, though.
Yeah,
there's got to be a way for me to blow this up.
But we could talk more about it. Usually, it's Alt and the wheel will usually change the scale of images.
I made it full screen, but it's still not quite big enough. No worries. You'll post the picture. They'll know what you're looking at.
Yeah, and they won't be able to read it either, even if they can make out the letters.
Challenge accepted. All right, you heard him, guys. So go to the forums, we're going to
break it down. And the thing I'm going to do is I'm going to throw my logic in. If you want to do research on Mesoamerican cities, you'll kind of see the inspirations where I took them from. But it's my own thing, because essentially they lay out this city specifically is the cosmology of the universe as they know it. This is how they believe the universe is, and the way it's broken up, and it's also their society is based off of the universe. Sort of like more people know this about the Chinese, where like the supernatural world had a structure roughly equivalent to Earth, where you had an emperor which oversaw everything in the heavens the same way that you did on Earth. And so but this city itself is laid out in such a way, in that way. And in the middle of the city is a basic square that you would find throughout any Mysterious city. It'd be more grand here, but the idea is even that part is like the life cycle all wrapped into one. There's a temple for heaven, there's a temple for hell, and these are actually if you go to heaven, you're going into this one temple. If you're going to hell, you're going into this other temple, and they're literally gateways.
Yeah, I was just going to use that word. I was going to say, are they gateways?
So. As a proof, the way Michael said it was pretty accurate. It looks like, looking at it looks like a wheel, because they literally formed the land inside of here to be it's probably not a perfect circle, but it's probably a lot closer than it should be in real life. It's probably closer in real life than it is in my picture.
Well, the thing is, though, it's actually pretty easy to create a perfect circle when it comes to building stuff. So do you want to just give that to them?
Yeah, I mean, it could be off by like centimeters or whatever, but for the scope of it, like if you see my picture,
how large is that?
It's closer than my picture.
How large is that center circle?
That center circle,
half a mile, 2 miles,
probably
200
feet, a mile, about a mile diameter.
So that center circle is a small town.
Yes, I mean this is essentially it's the center of their empire.
Okay.
Which at its height was impressive. And then at the center of that circle is the royal compound. If you can see in the bottom section, the square is actually the royal compound. So there's like palaces in here. Everything needed for the emperor is in this section. Now, it's not like the Forbidden City, like most people can't get in here. It's very hard to get in here, but the emperor can leave.
Will you do me a favor? Because you're saying a lot of things that are keying in and really interesting me. Yes, I am interested. Interesting me? Interesting. Yeah, I think that's appropriate wording. One, emperor. So it's an empire.
Oh, yes.
So I want to write to footnote that. I also want to footnote the gateways to heaven and hell. I think that's really interesting too. So when we talk,
one minor part of the plaza.
No, that's fine. But my point is, like, when we talk about when we do the build episode, or we do, I think we have 2 more episodes just out of that alone. 1 a build episode, and 2 just a talking about their culture episode. I don't want to. I don't want to get us too far off a topic, because this episode is meant just to be about the city. But you're saying a lot of stuff.
By cultural inspirations into why it's laid out this way.
Right. My point is, you're saying a lot of really interesting things, and I want to get back to it, so I don't want to forget. So please.
And the thing to keep in mind is typically in most ancient cities, the important ones, a lot of the very important things that can be seen, the monumental types of structures,
the important ones.
No, the important places, but they're very deliberately laid out. Within, so like the Acropolis in Athens, it was designed to make the Temple of Athena the center of the city, and it dominated the culture of the city, for a long time until it got blown up by the Ottomans.
Athens?
No. And
yes, it always kills me when you're like Athens. I'm like, it's Athens.
No. You don't understand how language works, but that's a different.
Fair enough. I understand that there's no N in there, and you're pronouncing an N that doesn't exist.
Yes, and that's how language works. I'll explain language to you sometime. It's wonderful.
That would be helpful, because I'm terribly dumb.
Like most people who've learned a written language.
Terribly dumb?
You learned it. Well, you learn it the wrong way. You don't understand language because you think the written language is somehow language, when the written language is not.
Well, what word do you use for the written language as opposed to the verbal?
Well, the thing is, when you have languages over time, they naturally drop letters. The way vowels are said change. Things change about languages over time, and it's because of people doing it and people picking it up.
But are we talking about
over long periods of time?
Yeah. No. What's the word? It's not a language, but it's a dialect. Are we talking about dialectical
dialects
modifications?
Dialects are only a journey to a new language. So essentially, a dialect, if given enough time and enough distance, becomes a new language.
Well, enough, but I would say that nature of the word, when you're talking about a dialect, you're talking about a modification of an existing language where it's not its own.
I'm saying is, like, if you take a language, and we'll go pre-written languages to make this simpler, right?
Okay.
1,000 years later, it's the same language.
Well, anything 1,000 years later is going to be different.
Well, you have to go that long. Within a couple generations, like if you look at Old English versus English today, they are the same language, but if you don't have the proper training, you're not getting through an Old English book.
Fair enough. But see, I'm thinking of like local words. Like, I'm talking about like small differences, but I suppose they really are like bigger. Because if you go into the South, you can talk about like Creole. Creole is dramatically
that's a little bit different though, because that's
because you're talking English and French
from a language mixed in with the language of the conquerors. So we take the words from the conquerors, but we use it within the structures of the languages that existed before. So Creoles are something even different. I've actually watched, there's a great course that's really fabulous on language, but we should really stay away from that topic.
All right, let's get back to the city, because I could talk about this stuff all day.
We'll talk about language. We'll do an episode on language too.
Let's do that soon.
This is a language generation episode. Okay.
All right, so that's a third new episode based on.
So once again, the city.
Where were we?
Episode 294. We're looking
246.
Or 246, depending on
same episode.
I would check 292 in the website, though, is just what I'm saying.
292 is a third number. It's 294.
Oh shit.
So now today's episode is 292, 294, but most importantly 246.
We have a whole new numbering system going on.
Yes, folks. It's very complicated. See the Mesoamericans. That's where they inspiration from that.
The Elven city is literally, it's like there were some islands here. They expand them out. The circular, the ones that aren't hard lines, they're the absence of lines really. The circular ones, those are all canals. and they're big canals. They're like those 100-yard canals.
Okay.
Very big canals. And in some parts of the city, there are street canals too, but they're not the streets and the small canals aren't here. These are the major ones. Those 4 things that look like they're at angles coming off of the city, those are actually the roads that exit the city.
Okay.
And you notice everything's on an angle. That center canal at the north points towards a mountain that they think is where Mystr brought life to the planet, where she gave birth to her children.
So Mystr is their god.
Mystr is their god. Mystr are her children. So all of the elves, according to the Mystr, are children of this god Mystr. And it's not necessarily a good relationship to want to be part of. But now to understand it all, you have to look at the smaller map. It explains the whole city and its layout in a way. There are 4 triangular plazas that are off the royal compound. And they actually all have buildings where the emperor can look into those plazas from essentially the top of his pyramid into each of those plazas.
So that center square is a pyramid?
So the center, it's not all a pyramid. There are multiple pyramids.
Fair enough.
There's a couple inside, and then there's 4 outside, and then there's a wall that connects the 4. But the emperor will use those to when there's something that's a religious ceremony he has to take care of. It's usually going to be part of the plaza of the priest, where that's where heaven and hell are. So it's the triangle that is to the left as you're looking down at the map. Is that triangle is the plaza of the priest. So there's a pyramid that's heaven. There's a pyramid that's hell. And there are other pyramids too. There are some places that people live in here as well, but the emperor can actually engage and be part of those ceremonies, which he has to from his pyramid that connects to that plaza. And then down below, there's another triangle. It's the Plaza of Commerce, and this is actually where the high-end trading takes place. Not a lot of small shops, but it's where you go if you're bringing in a bunch of cattle to sell, or it's where you go because you're come to the city to do major trading. That would take place in this plaza here. The next plaza, the one to the right of the royal complex, is the commons. There are some stone courts, the major important ones that where the ball games take place in, happen there. And in the top one is the Plaza of the Warrior. And so that's where the top, essentially think of it like a knightly order, if you're thinking about it in Western sense, but it's actually the most important warrior guild, or however you wanted to call that in town. They're here.
Would it be considered a caste system?
They have a caste system, and that's where the rings come in around the city. Okay. So they have it's a tribal society that has some urban areas. So you have lots of clans that make up the tribes. The tribes have home, or the clans have homes all throughout the ringed area around the city. And depending on how powerful the clan is, would determine how big their little compound structure is. And you notice it's like where it looks like it's concentric rings. The less status your clan has, the further out in the circle you are. The further you are away from the emperor.
Not much has changed. They did things like that in a lot of American cities throughout the development of certain cities. Like yes. That was kind of the way. It's like if you weren't in New York's like that. If you're not in Manhattan, you're not in the city. If you live in New York consists of 5 boroughs. So it's literally islands. You have Manhattan, Staten Island, Brooklyn and Queens are actually physically connected, and then the Bronx. And if you say, "Oh, do you live in the city?" Even though saying New York refers to all 5, but if someone says, "Do you live in the city?" they're referring to Manhattan.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's a status difference. Like if you live in Manhattan, it's a step up over everybody else. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like Manhattan, then Brooklyn, then Queens, then it's a flip a coin of whether it's Staten Island or the Bronx. I would probably say the Bronx and then Staten Island, because Staten Island is it's a bit of a drive to get from Staten Island into the city or anywhere else.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's really something that from the beginning of cities in class structure, it's always been that way. Wherever the most powerful people are, whether it's the center of your democracy or if it's a monarch, as in the case of the Mysteritas, wherever that person is, around them, based off of what's important, what jobs are important, get positions close to them. And so you kind of see what's important: priest, warriors, commerce, and the people, right? But you'll notice when you look at the other city, there are 4 quarters to the city. The foreign quarter, which essentially extends out literally from the plaza, the commerce plaza. The floating quarter, which is where a lot of people live due to the lakes, and there's lots of rivers, because it's kind of an Amazonian / rainforest at the base of where the city is. So there's lots of rivers. There's lots of people who live on boats. Some even migrate on boats where they have no permanent structure. But so that whole area is very reminiscent, where it's like almost like boats permanently strapped together and they don't move. But in a very precise way, so it complements the land ones around there.
Reminds me a little of Waterworld.
Except a lot more people live here than probably in all of Waterworld. And there's no Valdez, which is unfortunate. There's the warrior quarter, so a lot of the clans that are typically warriors, that's where they live. And then there's a priestly quarter where a lot of clans where people become priests, those clans are in there. And but essentially the entire everything that you need to understand about the culture is spoken in the city. Their belief on the way the universe is, and even the roads and the canals are meaningful. And because I know the creation mythology, right? Mystr, the way she created life was she was murdered. Yeah. It's rough. A blood sacrifice. She was murdered to create life. Essentially, she had 4 children. The children all stab her because they want to take control, because she's the empress of the universe, right?
Very Greek.
So each of them, or very Mesoamerican, each of them stab the mother. And so there's 4 major wounds. Those are the 4 roads that come in.
Makes sense.
Then one was the priestly one was the warrior one was the guy who worked the fields, and one was essentially all 4 quarters of the city derive from reflect the 4 gods where that came from. Now they chopped her into bits afterwards. The canals.
They are rough.
They are rough. But it was through her blood which brought the maize, the corn, right? The food. So that's essential. So all the important food came from her blood. The city is a symbol.
It leans right into blood sacrifice, human sacrifice. Yeah.
Yep. Yes. So the thing is, and you could be like me and you can overthink this stuff. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? But reflecting the way my elves work, this city makes a lot of sense. And that center part, if you go to things that become Mysteritas cities throughout their empire, they have those at the center.
Those rings, those temples.
Yeah. And there's actually a major temple in the middle of the royal compound, which actually is magical, obviously. But there's actually a tree
obviously
at the center of it. And so the tree represents a bit of the mother coming through, a bit of Mystr coming through. So they build a pyramid around this tree, which then sprouts out the top. It's actually a very large tree, but most of it's in here. But the leaves and stuff are obviously above it.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously there's magic aiding the way it's created. But over time, as the tree gets larger, they make the pyramid larger around it.
Mm-hmm.
So you can actually kind of tell how old the city is by how big that pyramid is, because that reflects how tall the tree is.
I'm confident you know this, but the listeners may not. When I went to the Mayan temples in Playa del Carmen, which is right near Cancun, it's like 40 minutes away. They actually were like, "Oh, we need a new temple, a new pyramid," and all they did was build that one on top of the old one. So the old one, it's solid stone. It's solid stone all the way through. And all they did was pile more stones on those stones to make it bigger.
They'll use fill to fill it out, and then they build a new temple. Yeah. And that's very much the way the construction philosophy is of the Mysteritas, where over time things just get bigger, like the city. But this city won't get any bigger. Like, no more rings, because you have all of your statuses accounted for. They would have to go vertical at this point.
They wouldn't just like in that last ring use up more land.
The city is completely like, it's all homes.
Well, that's my point. So like if you had more people come into the city or population expanse, they would just come up with a way to advance their technology and go vertical as opposed to building outward?
Yes. For this city. For other cities, not necessarily, but for this city, remember, this city to them is a map of the universe. It explains the cosmos, and not just from a geographical standpoint, but from the way it works religiously. Probably over time, if the religion breaks down a bit, then yes. But like with the mindset of them, which changes very slowly because they have much longer lives than humans. A generation of elves is much longer, and especially
how long do your elves live?
It depends.
Well, I mean, give us an approximation.
So, like, if you're like an emperor level person, right? So, like, you live the longest life, it's around 1,000 years.
Okay. Average,
probably 300.
Oh. Wow. Okay. Considerably lower than an emperor. I assume the emperor is also using magic to do something to elongate his life span.
It probably has, most of it has to do with they can live to their potential because they have better nutrition. They're less likely to get killed in war, and essentially if they're sick, they have the resources of the empire to make them feel better. So anybody
could live to 1,000 years. It's just they usually cut down a little early because of other things.
Because of, and largely nutrition, probably.
Okay, fair enough.
Don't have the food support.
Very little has changed.
Very little has changed. Now, this is very much based off of humans, right? And when I say 100, that would be on the extreme level. Or 1,000, probably like, and essentially I took sort of human lifespans of the time and I multiplied it by 100. So, humans in the ancient world would live 30 years on average. And part of that's infant mortality rate too.
I was about to say, yeah.
But, rulers could easily live 70, 80, 90 years. Largely because, they get better health care. Now, it doesn't always protect them, though.
It's so funny to say it that way, but it's totally true.
and the irony is, too, a lot of times, like especially at the medieval era, sometimes having a doctor was more dangerous than not. Sometimes it was better to not have a doctor because of the practices were so bad.
I saw an article the other day that talked about a doctor who in one surgery killed 3 people.
Wow. In one surgery, that's pretty good.
In one surgery, he was known for, this guy was in the Civil War, I believe, and he was known for speedy amputation. So he was so fast with amputating an arm or a leg that he was sought after because he could make it as quick as possible for a soldier who needed an amputation. So in this one amputation, he cut off the guy's leg, accidentally severed, I think, a thumb of his assistant who was helping to hold the soldier down. And because he did it so quickly, and I forget what the time was, they actually had, I believe the article mentioned how fast it occurred. A shockingly brief amount of time. So the soldier ended up dying. The assistant ended up dying because of like sepsis or something. Mm-hmm. And another person onlooker was so awestruck by the speed that he had a heart attack and died. So one procedure, 3 deaths.
We're going to mark that as a record. We don't know if that's technically true, but we'll mark that.
It is a record. Like they
to our knowledge.
To our knowledge. Fair enough.
But the big takeaway here is think about what's important. Like if a culture does not care about astronomy, they're probably not going to have precise layouts like this city. And you can go to like most cultures, in North America and South America. So places that are far distinctly different than places in Eurasia and Africa, which were all connected. And so there's a lot, it would take a lot of
influences, mutual influences.
Yeah. But even in North America and South America, which, the best we know had very, very little until recently, it's like a lot of times there'd be structures and things placed into cities that were showing where the equinox are. And all of these lines approximate to that stuff too, coincidentally.
Jeff did air quotes for that.
Yeah. Because it wasn't coincidental. It's
was it? No, it's not.
Of course
right?
not. No.
Yeah, okay.
I just, where they're at, this is the lines where things have to be. And the mountain's very important. And part of the reason the city was built here was because of the way it lined up with the mountain in the prehistoric time for the elves there. So, nothing's by chance. But in a monarchical society, the people in charge have a heavy influence over the way things are structured. It's like if you go to like a Hellenistic city that was a democracy versus one that was a monarchy, the city layouts were completely different on purpose. And the monarchical one came later on after Alexander. And so a whole new urban planning came out in response to
how to defend.
Nothing to do with defense. It had more to do with the way they wanted people to view the society. What is important to the society? So if you go to a city like Perma, I'm pronouncing this incorrectly. It was an important city in the Hellenistic period. Permagon, I think, might have been the name. It was where the treasury was for one of the successor kings who got killed. He literally made the guy in charge of the city a eunuch to make sure he didn't rebel against him. Mm-hmm. And then he was like,
because that makes you not want to rebel.
Well, and then, of course, the guy who was pissed off because he got his junk cut off rebelled and took the treasury of the king.
Yeah, shocker.
And the create of the city was it was the anti-Athens, because Athens was still seen as the cradle of democracy back then.
Athens.
But this city was not. This city was the opposite, where at the top, royal homes and important stuff. So there's a lot more. Instead of just the Acropolis with one important thing, the deity to the city, there were several things up there which the ruling families thought were important. And so depending on the way the culture thinks can influence the way the cities are built and will to a degree. And sometimes it's very regulated in a society, and other times it's very fungible over this culture versus that culture.
I'm sorry, fungible? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
What is
the world?
What is fungible? What do you mean by that?
It's like if you take fungus and squeeze it, it's fungible. You can manipulate it easily.
Malleable? Is that the word you're looking for?
Malleable would be another word for fungible. Yeah.
I don't know that fungible is a word.
I'm pretty sure it is. I don't know where I picked it up from, but
that might be a Jeffism. It might be a Jeffism.
But I come up with my stuff because I heard it and I attach it correctly or incorrectly into my brain.
Fair enough.
But I'm pretty sure fungible is a word. Beyond me. It's obviously a word because I used it.
Well,
and that's how language works.
That's how dialects work.
But remember, a dialect is it's on its journey, right?
Right. That's why I'm saying it works in a dialect. If you say fungible is dialectical.
People who speak a Southern accent in English will be technically a different language than what
given enough time. Yeah.
Yeah. It's in the process of changing. The same way, we're really a different language than Old English. That's the reason why they call it Old English, because it's really no longer the same thing. So, but now the interesting thing is to see how writing and media influence that. Because with dictionaries, you have this thing that tells you how to pronounce a word. That's new. So it'll be interesting in 1,000 years to see how close languages are. I bet you there's a lot more continuity than there was before the written word.
I would agree.
Or especially before wide accessibility to the written word. But yeah.
You want to bring this in for a landing?
Lay out of my city.
I don't know if you heard me there.
Nope.
I said, you want to bring this in for a landing?
It's time to bring this in for a landing.
I have the world building task and the real world task, if you want to give them both to me.
Build a city.
Your notes have nothing. Build the city is definitely the real world task. Yeah. Or I'm sorry, the world builder task.
Both.
It's definitely
both of them.
No, don't build a city in the real world. That'll take too much time. Build a city is your world building task. Real world task. Go visit a city that you have not been to before. And here's what I recommend. Pull out a map, Google Maps, go online, learn a little bit about it before you go there and plan out a day. It doesn't have to be an expensive day, but maybe find some culturally significant places to eat. Try to, if they have, for instance, there's a city right near me.
Eat where the locals eat.
Right. Well, there's a city right near me where their Polish community is very, it's large and it's festive. So there's a lot of, it is hard hitting. So there's a lot of great Polish places to eat there. So if you're going to go to that city, you're going to go, try to find a great pierogi place. If
they actually have a really wonderful Polish festival there every year.
They do.
If you're Polish, you've maybe been here.
Yeah, there's also a great. We'll just call it out. Hard hitting New Britain.
Hard hitting New Britain.
There's also a great Austrian club there. There's German and Austrian communities there as well.
They invaded.
New York is famous for its Italian communities, and the irony is that Little Italy in Manhattan is actually really small. It's only one street and about 2 blocks long.
And actually, in the Northeast in general, from Boston to New York,
a lot of Italian, tons of great Italian food all over New England. But
the our point is, I liked how you picked New Britain, because I think typically when you say visit a city, people think of New York,
New Haven, Chicago. Well, but my point is that it doesn't. You don't have to be near a major city. You can be near a small city and find some really great finds, whether that is a museum, a park, gardens or restaurants.
Excellent. Okay. Well, that is it. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for listening to the World Builders Anvil.
We would love it if you would share the World Builders Anvil with 2 of your friends.
And so would they.
If they are unfamiliar with podcasts, then you get to introduce them to the wonderful world of podcasting.
Take them to Stitcher or iTunes, or best of all, just send them to our website, www.gardul.com.
That's GARDUL.com.
Now strike while the mithril's hot.